The first bed I really remember was not a bed at all. It was the cracked wooden floor of an abandoned house, and the first lullaby I remember was the wind pushing through broken windows and making tin cans roll across the room like slow little ghosts. By the time I was 3, my parents were gone. Our house was gone, and I was sleeping with my arms wrapped around a dented can like it was a person who might disappear if I let go, while everyone in town drove past that sagging place and told their kids not to go near it. Never guessing there was a little boy named Cairo lying on the floor inside, listening for footsteps he recognized, and a voice that would never call his name again. Before everything burned, my world was small but good, a cheap rental on the edge of town. My mom humming along with the radio while she cooked my dad fighting with the old stove because the burner never lit on the first try. Me at the table banging a spoon until they laughed and pretended to be annoyed, that easy, ordinary noise you only miss when it's gone. The night it all changed started like any other storm, night rain hammering the roof lights flickering. My dad muttering about how the wiring in these places was going to kill somebody. One day, my mom checking the kitchen window with that little crease in her brow that meant she was worried. Then, forcing a smile as she turned back to me and said, "Cairo baby, come here," like keeping me close might keep the whole house standing. The outlet behind the stove spat a few sparks. Nothing dramatic at first, then the wallpaper darkened, turned orange, and suddenly, there was a strip of fire crawling up the wall, quiet and greedy, sucking the air right out of the room. My dad grabbed a towel and tried to beat it back, coughing as smoke hugged the ceiling, and I just stood there with my spoon in my hand, staring at the orange glow like it was a movie that would be over in a minute. My mom dropped to her knees, so we were eye to eye, her fingers hot on my shoulders, her eyes wide and scared, but still soft, and she said, "Listen to Mommy, stay close." And I nodded, because that had always been the answer: stay close to Mom, and everything will be okay. Then the house made this awful cracking sound somewhere above us, the roof groaned, and there wasn't any time left to explain anything. She grabbed me and ran for the back door. The smoke dropped lower. My dad shouted something behind us. Rain pounded on the other side of the door, and right there on the threshold, with the fire at her back, and the night in front of me, my mom gave me one hard shove that changed everything. 1 second I was pressed against her chest, the next, I was flying into the rain, sliding in mud, gulping down air that tasted like ashes, and goodbye my small hands clawing at the ground as I tried to get back up. I stumbled, turned toward the door, expecting her and my dad to come right behind me. But the doorway filled with thick black smoke. There was a crash from somewhere inside, louder than the thunder. And then there were sirens and shouting, and faces I didn't know, and the 2 faces I needed most were just gone. From the sidewalk, that scene looked like firefighters moving with purpose. Flashing lights bouncing off wet pavement, neighbors with blankets and phones in their hands. But from where I was, it was just noise and strange hands tugging at me, and voices saying, "It's going to be okay," when nothing about it felt even close to okay. Someone tried to steer me toward a truck, someone else wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, everybody's eyes locked on the fire instead of on the little kid at the edge of the yard. And in that tiny gap where nobody was really watching me, I did what scared kids do best. I ran. I slipped out of their grip, dragged the blanket behind me like a heavy cape turned down a side street. My legs already knew by heart, and headed for the one place my parents had always told me not to go, the old wooden house at the end of the block. The porch leaned. The paint-peeled windows were cracked or boarded. Grown-ups called it unsafe and condemned. Like those words would keep kids away, but that night, unsafe just meant empty, and empty meant nobody asking questions I couldn't answer. The side door stuck until I leaned my whole weight into it. Then it gave with a shudder, and I stepped into air that smelled like dust and old rain, and somehow that felt more honest than the bright, noisy scene I had just walked away from. The floor creaked, dust floated in a strip of light from a broken window, and as the wind shoved at the walls, a tin can rolled across the boards and bumped into my toes, so I picked it up and kept it, not knowing that this stupid little can was about to become my comfort, my toy, my pillow, my anchor. That house became my whole world. People ask how a 3-year-old survives alone, and the honest answer is that I almost didn't, but kids figure things out when there is no other choice. I learned which dumpsters behind the little store might have bread that was stale, but still chewable, which corners of the gas station lot had dropped snacks. Nobody picked up how to pry open cans and not slice my fingers too badly, how to move like a shadow so nobody really saw me. My feet got tougher from walking barefoot. My clothes stiffened around me, my words sank down somewhere deep, where fire and fear had burned a hole so that every time I tried to talk, my throat clamped shut, and my chest got tight, and staying silent felt safer than trying to explain myself to anyone. I slept curled on the floor, with that can pressed to my chest, like it was someone's hand, woke up to the sound of cars, and footsteps waited for a voice I knew. And when it didn't come, I told myself I had to stay in that house because leaving it would mean saying out loud that my parents weren't coming back. Grief is sneaky like that. It traps you in the very place that's killing you. Everything shifted the week the new neighbors arrived. I woke up one morning to the low rumble of a moving truck and the slam of doors, and my whole body went tight because loud meant change, and change had not been kind to me so far, you know what I mean. I crawled to my corner behind a broken crate, clutching my can, and peered through a crack in the wall. A truck sat in the driveway of the house next door, and a couple climbed down, stretching and laughing, in that tired way you hear at the end of a long day. Then a little girl hopped out after them, braids bouncing, sneakers bright against the dull grass. I didn't know her name yet, didn't know theirs either, only that they were busy building a new life while I hugged my knees in the dark and hoped the old house would stay invisible. But old houses tell on you. The wind shoved the front door. It dragged across the floor with a long, low moan. My stack of cans tipped and clattered like a dropped toolbox, and that sound cut straight through the moving day noise. The little girl's head snapped toward the house. "Mom, did you hear that?" she called, and her mom, balancing a box, just said, "Hear what, baby? This place is full of noises," and kept walking. Her dad chuckled something about how nobody lived here, how it had been empty for years. From my corner, I thought, yeah, that's what you all decided. That could have been the end of it, but kids like her don't let things go that easily. The next morning she came back. I heard the porch steps creak under lighter feet, heard a small voice humming some made-up tune to herself, and then her face appeared in the broken window, eyes wide as she tried to understand what she was seeing. Imagine expecting to spot a raccoon and instead finding a boy about your cousin's age, barefoot, filthy gray shirt hanging off one shoulder, curled around a rusted can like it was the last safe thing on earth. She didn't scream or run, she just froze for a beat, then yelled, "Mom, come here, there's somebody in there." And that shout was the first step out of the life I thought I was stuck in forever. Nora. That was her mom, came running, wiping her hands on her jeans, half ready to scold her for making things up. But when she leaned in to look through the same gap, her whole body went still. "Oh my God. Malik, call someone, there's a child inside," she said, and her voice was part shock, part decision, like she had already chosen she wasn't walking away from this. The door groaned when she pushed it open. Dust puffed up with every step, and she walked toward me. The way you walk toward something scared and hurt, slow hands open, talking. even though I could hear her heart pounding from across the room. Malik filled the doorway with worry, and a phone in his hand, and the little girl Alani hovered beside him, with both hands cupped around something white. One more step, and the board under Nora's foot squealed, and that small sound snapped me awake. My eyes flew open, my body jerked back against the wall, my can rolled away, and my hands flew up in front of my face, braced for a hit that wasn't coming. My breathing went fast and sharp, that old fire panic slamming back into my chest, and my throat locked around any sound that might have been a word. Nora dropped to her knees so she wouldn't be towering over me, put her palms flat on the floor where I could see them, and said, "Hey, it's okay, sweetheart. I'm not here to hurt you, I promise. You're safe here, okay? You're safe." I didn't believe her, not yet, but there was something in the way she said it that made me stay still instead of bolting for the darkest corner. Alani slipped in beside her and knelt a little farther back, and that's when I saw what she had been holding. A piece of bread, plain and soft and whole, cupped like it was precious. "Hi," she whispered. "I'm Alani. Are you hungry? You can have this. It's for you." My stomach answered before I did, growling loud enough that Malik flinched, but I still didn't rush them because nothing in my life had ever been free. I crawled sideways first, grabbed my can like I needed its weight, then inched toward the bread, in tiny jerks, every creak under my knees sounding like a warning. When I finally got close enough, my hand hovered in the air, shaking so hard it didn't feel like it belonged to me. Alani didn't shove the bread at me or pull it away, she just held still and waited. And that kind of patience from an 8-year-old was its own kind of miracle. I snatched the bread, pulled it to my chest, sniffed it, took a small bite without looking away from their faces. Nora slowly turned one hand palm up on the floor between us, not reaching, just leaving it there. "You're safe," she said again, softer this time. "No one is going to hurt you here." I stared at that hand for a long time, at the way it trembled just a little, and something that had been clenched inside me since the fire loosened. I still couldn't make my voice work, but I could put my own hand down, so I set it on the dusty floor near hers, our fingers almost touching, that thin strip of wood between us like a question. That was the twist in my story, the exact moment I stopped being just a rumor about a kid in an old house and started being a child someone was willing to reach for. After that, it wasn't magic. It was meetings and people with clipboards talking about shelters and temporary placement and how complicated everything would be, talking like I was a problem to solve instead of a person. Nora listened, nodded, and then said the thing that changed my life again. "He's not going back to an empty house tonight. He can stay with us while we figure the rest out." Neighbors had opinions. Of course, some said they were kind, some said they were reckless. Some lowered their voices and called me that fire kid, like my worst night was my whole identity. But inside their little new house, the only thing that mattered was what we did next. They didn't drag me in right away. They sat with me outside on the steps. Let me breathe air that didn't taste like dust, and fear let me choose how close to sit. Alani pointed to her room and told me she didn't know anybody in town yet, how maybe we could both be the new kids. Malik set a blanket near me instead of around me, gave me more food, and looked away while I ate. By the time the sky went soft and orange, my shoulders had dropped, and my grip on that can had loosened. When I finally stood up, legs shaky, and reached out to pinch Alani's sleeve, just a tiny tug, she looked at me and said, "Do you want to come?" And I didn't say a word, I just didn't let go. That night they helped me wash without making a big deal out of it, wrapped me in a towel that smelled like detergent, handed me a bowl of warm soup, and didn't rush me even when the spoon clattered out of my hand. Nora rubbed my back when I coughed. Malik quietly scooped the spoon up and set it back down, and nobody raised their voice or disappeared when I blinked. They laid out a small bed on the floor, next to Alani's right there in her room, and Nora knelt so we were eye level and said, "You can sleep here tonight if you want. Just tonight, until we figure things out." And that one safe tonight was more than I had dared to hope for in a long time. I lay down slowly, set my dented can next to the pillow, like my old world was keeping watch over my new one, and Alani whispered, "Good night, Cairo," like it was the most normal thing in the world. My fingers crept across the blanket and tapped her hand once just to make sure she was real, and Nora covered her mouth in the doorway to keep from sobbing. I fell asleep to the sound of a house settling and people breathing instead of cracking beams and sirens, and for the first time since the fire I slept like an actual child. So now that you've walked through that night with me, I want to ask you something. If you heard a sound in an old house everyone swore was empty, would you go look, or would you tell yourself it was just the wind and keep going? If you were in Nora and Malik's place, would you have pushed past the fear of paperwork and gossip and what-ifs to bring a scared kid home for the night? Or would you have left it to the system and slept better, thinking you did the responsible thing? Do you think they were right to argue for me to keep me close when it would have been easier not to get involved? And have you ever seen a kid in your own neighborhood or school who everybody judged from the outside without knowing what was burning in their life? Tell me what you honestly think in the comments. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that paying attention can literally save a life. Hit like if you believe that small choices, stopping listening, knocking on a door, can be the twist in somebody else's story. And if you want more real stories like this, messy and human and complicated, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one.